episode, I don't know, 4. So yesterday I was starting to read a book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's one of those classics everyone needs to read, I guess. I haven't read it before. Yeah, it's one of those things where people say it's a really good book, everyone needs to read it. It's one of the classics, but you just don't get around to it. So I was in the bookstore a few days back looking for a new read. It was the only real book I recognized, and sometimes you don't really look for new stuff. Sometimes you see like something that's considered a classic, so you kind of pick it up, start reading. So I haven't gotten far at all, first few episodes. But the first story was about this guy who, I don't remember his name already, but his whole story was that he was really, really committed to getting into business with Benjamin, no, Edison, right? So he was really committed into getting with business with Edison. His whole shtick was he's like committed to be in business with Edison. That is the one goal that he is committed to completing. And his story was that he was thinking that into reality. And he went to Edison. He said he, wants to work with him, not for him. He first gave him a job, something really basic. As he got better and better at the thing, as he kind of invested more of his time into being just around the presence of his dream, eventually he found the opportunity to seize the opportunity and get into business with him. I don't remember the exact principle, but there was like a device that is invented that he believed in. Not a lot of people believed him, and he basically facilitated the installations of these devices, the marketing, I guess, of these devices. It went to the point where it was even like Edison invented it, but what was his name? Brooke, I think, installed it. I might be butchering the name. Should be prepared next time. Now I know that that's a thing I have to look up. But yeah, the idea is that what stood about in that first, it's like the first chapter, the very first story, I think, in the whole book. But already what stood out to me is that I already draw a parallel to my life. It was clear to me at that moment how interesting life happens as you're just on a path and you keep grinding on that path. I'm going to be honest, a lot of advice centers around figuring the thing that you love and going all in on that thing. I think in practice that doesn't really work on like that. In practice it works more of a way of guiding a ship and adjusting course as you kind of figure things out. The general direction of where you're going, but as you're kind of charting your path, as you kind of mapping out the stars, you have to make pivots and adjust and kind of course correct into the shore that you're actually interested in. Because when you're starting off, you just don't know. And I think for me, a big paralyzing thing at the beginning was the fact that I just didn't know. It was really, really tough for me to commit to something because I was so unsure. But the answer was just doing, and eventually you figure it out. But the story is not about that. The story I want to tell is about the fact how in life, as you kind of progress, as you kind of learn things, as long as you're committed to the path, eventually the opportunity opens up, right? Because when I was starting off with like online business in general, it was like 5 years ago, 5 fucking years ago. It took me that long to actually make a buck in this industry, in this kind of the online business in general. I'm gonna be honest. There were some like stunts, some little bit of cash rewards here and there on the way there, but honestly, yeah, 5 years until anything actually broke through. And yeah, it's those few stories where it's just like 3 minutes until gold, right? Like it's a case of if you for commit to something for long enough, eventually you kind of create this causality loop that gets you results. But how do you manage to keep sane through that time? That is the topic I want to bring up today. How do you manage to not give up? What is the mentality you have to maintain to keep sailing? Because it's really, really easy to kind of just let your hands go and just stop trying at all. especially if you don't see those like really crazy results. And even after 5 years, when actually something, started happening for me, it's still not like crazy results. They're just basic stuff, right? Like a few couple $1,000s a month. And that's like great. Now I get to live a life I really, really appreciate, and I'm so grateful for, just because I committed to doing that thing for so long. But it was never like easy to clear. Even now, it took me a lot of convincing myself to actually take the leap and start traveling around the world, which was like the end goal, because it feels so uncertain throughout the whole journey. Like from the beginning to the end, you just have to keep putting inputs without having any guarantee of actual reward, and just trusting the process. And it's so fucking difficult. So yeah, when I talk about some practical ways that I found on the mental state, the mental side of things, on actually keeping course, right? Because I'm gonna also talk about how this played out in practice for me. One of the things I mentioned in the first ever fall podcast, and one of the articles I also wrote, one of my buddies really liked it, so that's why I'm thinking about it a bit more. It's the concept of like eliminating the bad realities. This concept kind of arrived in my brain, I guess that was 4 or 5 years back when I first stopped drinking. I already talked about this in one of those videos. It was a case of me just realizing that if I stop completely using alcohol, like completely, you eliminate a really bad timeline from ever occurring, right? And the combination with that is, I think, a biggest driving force, because whenever I feel down, whenever I kind of get stuck and maybe give up, I've given up so many times and so many ideas and so many stuff. You kind of sit for it for a while. After you settle down, you kind of want to get back into it, because your whole mentality is arrived around, can I eliminate the bad timelines? And a really, really bad timeline, a timeline I would possibly really regret, is a timeline where I look back and think, oh, fuck, I didn't give it my best try, right? That one time I gave up, that was the last time I actually gave up and I didn't try again. I know that timeline would be so painful for me. That's a big reason why I keep going. But yeah, that's still a bit fluffy. Let's try and dial it back in. So once again, coming back to one of those concepts I mentioned in my first episode, right? About living life with no regrets. That's a big part of it. It's a case of, at any given moment, you have to be able to pull yourself out of your current state of mind and kind of look at a bird's eye view. And that doesn't happen naturally. It has to happen like a habit, like a thing you train. What this allows you to do is recognize patterns that are not good for you. And oftentimes what happens in life is that you're just, living. You're in a role, right? Maybe you gave up on that business idea, and then you took a part-time job, and then you actually like that job. There's people you like hanging out with, and you kind of forget about the thing, right? You forget about the thing you wanted above that, and you get on a roll, and you start working and start earning some money, and life's good, life's settling down. But then at one point you're gonna be looking at the ceiling in the morning, and you're gonna have a click. It's like, oh fuck, that's not the end goal I'm looking for. I wanted to do the other thing. Did I give up? That thought is gonna come to your mind. That thought is gonna come to your mind, and when that happens, you have to recognize that opportunity. And it's a habit. It's a fucking straight up habit. You have to train yourself, because when that happens, you have to realize that you have to make a change at that moment, because it's not a sin at all to, make a bad decision or give up, because you got to look at yourself as what really happened, right? Because if you look back 5 years back, when you gave up on a business idea, when you gave up on a cause, on a purpose, you're gonna realize that you probably think about the bad outcome without recognizing the inputs. At that time, you had a specific mental state, a specific psychic state, a specific kind of situation in your life that made you make those decisions, and it's completely fine, because if given the same inputs, you would make the same decision. You know how I know this? Because you did, right? Now you're mature. Now you have a different mindset. And once that idea comes to mind, and it could be something you already know, you just have to remember. I call that an input. Once that input arrives, you have to train yourself on doing something about it. So yeah, so when you recognize those opportunities, you have to pattern match. You have to make sure that you remember to change something. That's the first thing. You have to kind of forgive your past self, because if you don't, it's really hard to change your identity. You have to kind of separate your current self and your past self. And you have to train yourself, like I said, to do something. And what do? You change your identity around the thing that you want to do. So when it came to like bad habits, I'm not a guy who uses alcohol. I'm not a guy who does drugs. When it comes to like good habits, I'm a guy who works out, right? I'm a guy who does the right thing. I'm a guy who says what he means and doesn't sugarcoat things. These are all kind of things you can adapt as identities. But it's really important that, like I said, you actually try and do that. It's not gonna be easy. You're gonna fail a bunch of times, right? You're gonna have these eureka moments, and you're gonna just think, okay, I have to change, and you're gonna try, and you're gonna fail. Again, the same thing applies. The next time you're sitting in bed and like regretting the idea that, oh shit, I just failed that last time I tried to do that. Same thing, boom. It's a new trigger, right? You have to then again pick up yourself up and try again. Eventually, just like I can say that I have played out in my life, eventually when you go through enough of these loops, you're gonna get far enough for the results to compound. For example, in my like business career, when I was starting out, like in ecom and dropshipping. I used to make stores, and I used to like make them in like months. I used to spend months making a single store, right? Then after my fifth attempt, I used to make them in days, right? But then still, I kind of stopped trying after I launched ads, for example, right? There was also always like a step I stopped trying where I gave up, right? So first it was like launching the site, then it was like actually, marketing the site. Then it was actually talking to, your network about the site. Then it was actually talking to people about the site. Then it was actually like selling a product, delivering a product. Like there's always these scary steps that are hard to break. And I honestly can say I've given up on each and every one of them, but I keep trying, because after I've given up, things settle down. I have this epiphany moment. I remember, oh fuck, I feel so bad that I gave up. I have to change something about it. I'm a guy who tries again. That's the identity shift. I'm a guy who tries again. If I keep trying, I'm gonna eliminate the reality where I look back at myself and think, ah, fuck, I gave up. And you keep doing it. It's not as really pretty. It's not as nice and clear cut as people make it seem online, especially all these young guys who like fucking just are crushing it on a really early age. I'm still on an early age. I'm like 26, and I used to look at guys who are like 21 and making millions. Same guys right now are still making millions, right? And there's new guys that are younger than me still making millions, and I'm still stuck where I am. But I have progressed. And it's so wild to recognize, because yeah, like each time I tried, it went further, further, further. And at one moment, there was like this little bit of a tipping point where actually I did enough of those inputs. I went far enough in the chain where I actually got the results I needed to. So yeah, the beautiful thing about it is that if you keep trying, if you keep like iterating, if you keep just adjusting it and keep pushing a bit further, your skills, your resources, everything just compounds. And there's like a tipping point where it actually went far enough where you can kind of sustain yourself from it. And once you can sustain for yourself from it, you can like grow a bit. Then you have some spare resources, which also accumulates. The more spare resources you reinvest, the more it kind of compounds and compounds. But there's definitely like a tipping point. It's really hard, really, really hard to me. Like making that first dollar are way difficult than anything else. Yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it, the whole concept. And I really resonated with that book, because you kind of really have to think and grow rich, right? You have to think that thing into reality. And yeah, the way you kind of stop yourself from giving up is recognizing these patterns. And if you're really, really stuck, I think I'm going to make a video on that, the next one. To really get stuck, you have to look at the next small thing that you have to get out of that. That's going to be the next video. But yeah, overall, that's the whole concept. It's a bit of an iteration of the first video. But the idea is very simple. You kind of don't rely on the rewards to not give up. You don't rely on the gratification, because you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get that guarantee you're gonna win. All you really have is your inputs. And once you don't have the outputs, you have to just trust on iterating on inputs. You have to keep failing and trying again. The only way you can kind of consistently do that without going fucking insane is to build those habits that, make sense, basically. You kind of reward yourself on the fact that you just keep trying. It's like a habit. You don't even think about it. You don't even it's not like a thing. It's like when you start working out for a long time, at one point there's like inertia, like there's a habit where you can't kind of break it. It's really hard to stop working out because that's your whole identity, right? The same thing is with bad habits too, right? There's inertia. This is the same thing. And so not giving up isn't about fucking mentality. It isn't about anything like that. It's just about discipline. Well, it is kind of discipline, but it's really just a way of rewiring that brain to make it hard not to keep trying. At one point you just won't know how to do anything else. There's going to be a day after recording a bunch of these videos where I'm going to be able to tell that thought in a way, way better way. But yeah, so far that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.